Hey, everybody, welcome again back to the tavern. I am your wonderful host and the lead GM of Tabletop Misfits, and it is my wonderful pleasure to have Chris from 225 Games here for the evening. How's it going, Chris?
Hey, thanks for having me on. It is
Yeah, man. We've
nice
been
to be here.
talking with you and Garrett here for a couple months now, and we love bringing our friends onto the show to talk and just to have a good time. Shadow, we're glad to see you here, buddy. So I
Yeah.
used Chris's and Garrett's mid-journey AI system through exactly the. I asked Chris. I said, "What do you want to talk about tonight?" And he gave me all these cool ideas, and I said, "Great, these are all great." And then I threw them all in the thing all at once. And this is the crazy image we came up with, which was still pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, but we want to talk about monsters and fantastic places. And Chris was telling me I'm gonna kind of put him on spot here for a second, but Chris was telling me that they're working on some cool things with custom setting guide, which kind of sounds exciting. So,
Yes, we're very excited for that. It's actually coming from our stream that we run on Tuesdays, not every Tuesday, but every other week in
okay.
Story Elus. Garrett is the GM for that table right there. I've recently joined it on virtual. I was just kind of helping in the background, but we're running through Story Elus. That's the place that is. And it is full of whimsy, and it has like a 1920s prohibition
Okay.
mafia background kind of vibe.
Yeah, there's actually trying to think of who just did that. There's a it's a very almost Call of Cthulhu type mentality, in that 1920s, 1930s type time frame. So curiosity on this, since you're playing it in D&D and you're playing a whimsy 1920s, so what's different? Like, what are you seeing that you're adding to Story Ellis
Mhm.
that might catch somebody's attention? Like, has the world always had magic? Are you just discovering magic? How's that function working in Story Ellis so far?
Yeah, so to clarify, when we say like 1920s kind of vibe, but take that vibe and put it in like a fantasy D&D type setting.
Okay.
So we're not doing the whole guns and like technology and
Right,
things like
right,
that.
right,
You're still in like a medieval type
right.
technology, but yes,
So then
magic.
tell me how you're giving this vibe away, because now I'm curious even more. And I say, okay, now I'm in the medieval times where I know my story and see what we can develop here.
So the big thing about Story Elus is so magic, a lot that dives through the divine right. Like there was, the old gods, they were overthrown by this triumvirate, and then they were kind of stepping back because they were finding themselves, their connection with humanity was making them corrupt and impure. So they kind of stepped back, and in that power vacuum, the Jarl, he stepped forward and kind of took up what it's an artifact is the divine tears, and through him, like he started having more magical abilities, and he began to outlaw lots of different magic type things because he didn't basically want anybody to challenge his power. And a big
Okay.
thing that happens in this world is, yeah, like people can use magic and things like that, but a big thing that happens is there's an illegal like smuggling of what's called moonshine mana. So this is kind of where like the 1920s vibe comes, like prohibition kind of a feel, because moonshine, just like when alcohol was illegal, moonshine mana is illegal because of the Jarl, because he doesn't want it to get loose into the world, because that could create power to or challenge to his power. So there is an underground trade of moonshine mana, but it is something that's very risky, because when you drink it, you don't know what's going to happen, and that's kind of where the whimsy
Oh,
part
so you're
comes
playing
in.
kind of the wild magic.
Hmm.
Okay.
And we really don't know what's going to happen when you take some moonshine mana. um, we've been experimenting with a lot of different things, and some of the effects have been very interesting. So for one example that I really love, we have an artificer. He has this wooden puppet, kind of like a Pinocchio and Geppetto kind of thing.
Okay.
And it, he
Caught
thought
my
it was
interest.
alive. Yasvin thought that his puppet was alive, but everybody else knew it. He was just manipulating the puppet on his own. But I don't know. Yasvin's crazy. You have to see it. But when some moonshine mana just spilled on his puppet, it came to life. Like, I'm a real boy.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, and
That's
so
crazy.
Georgie is his name, the puppet. Georgie's alive now. And like sometimes we have to kind of like hide it, like, Georgie, no, you're not alive. Don't let people see
Oh,
you.
no.
Because we that could get us into some trouble, because that's
Yeah.
that could be some outlawed suspect type of magic effect. But there's also because it is, moonshine man is illegal and whatnot. There are speakeasies where you can sneak into and get some of this moonshine mana, some effects,
Hmm.
have some fun with that. And there's all sorts of other fun things happening in these speakeasies. Like there was a cage fight happening in one of the other sessions. So that
Nice.
could be some very fun things, but very much an active underworld that seeps all the way up
Oh, I
through
love.
through crime families, some organized mafia
Yeah.
situations happening. So like there's a little bit of political intrigue as well. There's just so much that you can do, and it has a
It
really good feel to
it'll
it.
be an interesting setting to play. And I love the fact that you're bleeding that setting into everything. You're not just starting it a little bit, or like, this is the drive, right? Like, this is your theme, this is the direction you're going, and this is super exciting to hear that you're everything that this uh moon mana, the moonshine mana seems to be connecting. And that's nifty to hear that you're using that one specific portion of the game to just drive the entire setting, which is awesome.
Oh
So
yeah. uh,
prohibition setting, yep, yeah, no, that's what we were talking about. Shadow is that he's bringing those moods from prohibition into it, and I think that's really cool. uh so, not to mention, political intrigue is a fun one. I love showing people the intricacies of how things work, and when they start to discover that some people aren't as good as they think they believe they are, or they might believe they're amazing, but they're doing some really dangerous things. uh,
yes.
Definitely getting a Godfather,
Mm,
Scarface feel going right now with this. So
like, see,
I'm
I
curious
just
to see how that continues, and I'd love to come over and create a character in Story Ellis and hang out sometime if you guys will have me. It's always like,
yeah,
I think that's a cool concept, and I
yeah,
think
we
we could definitely create a crazy character for that.
don't want to overload you, but yeah, we might be able to have you on sometime.
I'm not saying I'm overloaded, especially when I play. So my thing is if I'm playing a game, it doesn't really hurt me
Mm,
to play. Um, the only way it'll have an issue is if it's during a game that I have already set up, or it's time with the family, that kind of thing. But if I can squeeze the time in to play a game when I never get to play, I'm down.
oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah. Uh,
Was there
Speaking
a
of
great Gatsby like
playing,
NPC?
this
Oh,
will be my one little
oh,
plug for the evening, and it's not even for me. So if you want to see me play, I'm going to be playing over on the Vactar at October 11th. We're playing some spooky thing, and I am playing a werewolf Firbolg. I'm super psyched. So he's gonna be a 9-foot Firbolg. Amazing. Or, well, a 9-foot werewolf, but 7-foot Firbolg. So I'm really excited about that one too. I was building it last night. They told me they're like level 11, and I was like, really? 11? That's so dangerous. You're giving me so much power. But I'm super psyched to play it. It sounds like a lot of fun. But yeah, no, that's part of my goal this year is to get into more other people's streams and hang out with people and really get into their stories, because this is how we keep creating, right? Like
Mhm.
you can't you can only create so much by yourself.
Yeah,
And then when you start bouncing ideas off of people and you can see how other people play, that's where I start getting all sorts of inspiration.
absolutely.
Um,
That influence and that collaboration,
yep.
that it just comes together. And that's so. I got to ask about your werewolf character here, and just so in
Yeah.
general about you first. Like in general, are you like more of like a serious styled RP, or do you like have
Oh,
like some like
100%.
whimsy?
I don't,
Uh,
I'm very hard at whimsy.
okay.
If I have to, I will work at whimsy, and I will have whimsy moments. Like I am not a witchlight Fey realm, can see the good in everything type thing. Yeah, can't do it.
No.
I am very Barovia, very
Mm,
dark, gritty. Uh, our tech here, he's been playing in my games for years now. And he can be attest to it. I love asking characters for, backstories and give me names, give me people,
oh,
and
that
then
sounds dangerous with you.
I will find the way to make those characters either show off your strengths and weaknesses, or I will make those characters bleed. And his character specifically this last campaign, uh, he he did the exact opposite of what I normally ask, because I was like, well, what do we do? And he's like, well, I need a backstory, because I really don't have like a very brooding backstory. Like I don't know why I'd be an adventurer. I'm going out to help these people. He's like, I'm not sure how I'm going to tie into the story, and I was like, so you're telling me everybody's alive, right? And he's like, yeah, why? And I was like, oh, you'll find out. It's okay. Uh,
Oh no.
and his
You ordered those
father,
DMs.
yeah. So, well, I mean, it was. I'll tell you what, though, one of my favorite backstories that we've written together. Um, he he was a druid of the shepherd druid. Yes, yes, Eric, you can speak for a moment. I think he was a druid of the shepherd. Yeah, that's it. And he gave me the whole thing. Like, we built out what the Shepherd Grove looked like, what they did. They were like this exotic rescue fantasy creature rescue squad, pretty much. And his father was out on a bit. Was higher up in the organization. Went out on a mission to protect a unicorn. Came back riding a nightmare and completely corrupted, and just destroyed the entire village. And this is where we found out that the drow are actually alive still. And yeah, it was a pretty emotional moment. And then later on, finding out that half of the organization kind of was able to get away uh, in the panic. And then part of that was fun, because now when they arrive at other random cities, there's moments where these characters will randomly pop up, because that's where they went out to. So he'd find a character in his backstory just in another city that they were traveling to, and like, oh, how did you get here? Well, after the attack, we all scattered. Nobody really knows where everybody is. Uh, some people went to another big grove. Some people got off and like left to as far away as they could, and some people didn't make it. And it's just kind of how it worked. But no, I had a lot of fun with that. Whimsy, like I said, to me, whimsy is very difficult, and I think it's because I grew up in Dragonlance and Forgotten
Mhm.
Realms and Lord of the Rings. There's no, it's not really and I didn't get into stuff like, oh, let's see, I didn't get into things like Discworld and trying to think of a couple others. My brain's blanking at the moment. Who's the guy? Douglas, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, those types
Oh.
of concepts where things were a little more awkward, right? Like weird.
Yeah, a
Uh,
little more for the lulz, you know.
yeah, a little more for the lulz. And then like I have no humor, and I when it comes to Rick and Morty, everybody, all my friends love it. Like so many,
Oh
my kids love
no.
it. Everybody loves it. I can't get into that humor for anything.
Oh
I've
no.
tried so hard. I've watched so many episodes of that thing just because my buddies are like, dude, you got to check this episode out. This was so funny this time, and I was like, I watch it in this straight face, and I'm like, this is not my type of humor at all. But I'm not that. It's the same as like Adventure Time, like those types of things. I'll get ideas from it, but I won't get the humor, and I won't really get the like click of it that people enjoy with it. So that's why I said I played very brooding, very dark games normally. And but they're still, I enjoy them. My players come back every week, so I would guess they enjoy them. I've had some good experiences, uh,
Yeah.
and I
I
tell my players straight up. I was like, if you are coming for, you know, bubblegum and lolly, and gumdrops type games today, I can't do it. Just can't. Uh,
I definitely feel you. So I have different play styles for sure, like when I'm DMing or when I'm a
yeah.
player. So when I'm DMing, I want it to be very serious, very dark. I want to put you in really bad situations. So my favorite BBEG that I made, he is a he's the devil of choices
Okay.
and living up to his name. And so he doesn't portray himself as evil. He just puts you in choices that
That
are not good for you.
right. Yeah.
And he wants to
Exactly.
know what you're going to choose. So he sets up situations, and I love putting them in these really bad choices. Like you can do bad choice A or really bad choice B. There is no C.
Oh my goodness, that's so.
um,
I
and
love it, but
and I love like DMing that, like putting that out there, which was really fun. Putting that with our regular in-person table a few months ago, because our normal table that Garrett will run is full of whimsy. We're all chaos. There's jokes going everywhere. It's an absolute riot, like what's happening when we're going down. And so just the total tonal shift um, when we ran that, when it was very serious, it got very dark, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, uh, what do we do?" And
yeah.
it was really fun. Like I really enjoyed it. But as a player, I tend to be chaos incarnate. Um,
See,
so
see, that's where I have to ask, and this comes back from years and years of playing, and I'm talking, I've been playing now almost 20 years. Uh, is it is your player chaos incarnate, or is it you in, and not saying this is a thing that happens, but it does in a lot of my games. Is it you projecting something that you want your player to do or your character to do that is chaos incarnate? Because that's normally how I see things when that happens. And that's more because of the fact that it's something you as a player thinks interesting or is fun or exciting, but it might not be what the character would normally do. And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
So the main character that I do this with, because I only do this with one character. I have a lot of different
Okay.
characters that I'll play. So I'm not always like that. Just to clarify, nobody freak out.
Shadow,
But
let the chaos reign.
oh my chaos. No, but it's one character that I mainly do this with, and his name is Trouble. Or at least
Okay.
that's what he tells everyone is his name.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, I don't mind it. Like I have different types of chaos depending on which character I'm playing. If you watch last episode, as when I play Godfrey, who is extremely direct and has no real qualm about calling people out for anything that they do or anything that he perceives they could do, you'll watch a part of that episode where our guest was she believed herself an entertainer. And I said, okay, cool. And we had decided that we were going to find this. We went to an alchemist without spoiling too much, and the goal was to talk the alchemist into giving us something we need. And Godfrey's original next response to that is, well, if, and it's extremely monotone. I play it very direct, and he's just more of the fact of, if you can persuade somebody to give you something, I assume you also can remove it from somebody's pocket without them knowing. And the immediate response from her was just eyes open. Are you calling me a thief? And he was like, no, I'm just presuming it's something you have skills in. That's the type of chaos that character is. Mm-hmm. But then I play other characters that are completely chaotic, and other characters are completely lawful. So, but yeah, no, Godfrey is probably one of my newest favorite characters, just because of his directness and matter of fact, which we're actually opening up our Discord for role playing, where you get to meet some of these characters in a much more consistent basis.
I like that.
Our guest Brina, who came on as Kesis, had never met Godfrey before, and then ran into him in the building of the Condemned, and immediately he pissed her off. And I was like, well, not my fault. You walked into a building. I leaned over and I said, well, if you're looking for somebody, they're in the back. Otherwise, you're not supposed to be here and you should leave. And she was like, excuse me? I was like, I assumed you walked into the door, didn't knock, that you either belonged here or you need to go. She was so mad at my character, and I loved it because that was the point of the character.
I like that. That's definitely chaos in a very different way.
Yes.
So with Trouble,
I got a lot of my inspiration because I asked people. I said I was trying to figure out the directness of who I should inspire to act like. There's a character on I think it's Mission Impossible. I think is what one of our actors said. He said, you need to go watch this character. And then there is a character on a podcast that I have fallen in love with, and it's too short to me because it's only like 10 episodes, and I'm on episode 5 already, and I don't want it to end. So I'm very slowly going through the rest of it. And it's a Vampire the Masquerade podcast, which plays wonders into the political intrigue of the character and that kind of thing. But his name is Duke, and he has that same monotone accent and and I was like, no, this is literally, if I can pull you out of Vampire the Masquerade and throw you into D&D, this is exactly how I want my character to play. So he has been my inspiration for this character the entire time. And I can thank Matt, our Sigismund on our show, for that inspiration. So back to Trouble. So Chaos Incarnate, got it, makes sense. I love the name too. I'm guessing, let me rephrase it. I'm not guessing. I'm going to presume, because this is something I would do, is either one of 3 races. We're either going halfling, gnome, or tiefling.
You nailed it the first try. Halfling, all the way. You gotta be a halfling. Halflings are the best. So
I was like, halfling, gnome, or because it's either the 2 small guys or it's the tiefling. Because
it's got to be one of them, right?
It's got to be one of them. Well, the other thing is it's the way the name is. Normally, you wouldn't hear somebody being called by a persona or a direct word that would resemble them, unless it's a code word or a nickname, or if it's certain races, because like I use a lot of race specifically for halflings and gnomes. I'll come up with those types of nicknames in order to do those races. Halfling for life. Brina, you played an elf on our stream, and you said halfling. Rude. Why don't you play an elf?
Halflings. Yes. Halflings. I'm also gonna get on my soapbox here.
Go for it, man.
Halflings have the best racial trait.
Oh, lucky!
In all of D&D, it is the best racial trait out of any of them.
Agreed.
so like it makes me laugh, like when Spelljammer came out, or and some others before that, with all the new races. Some people in the community were like, such and such race is overpowered. Oh my gosh, the Warforged, they're too powerful. The Hadozi's too powerful.
Right.
All this stuff. And it's like, you realize that the halflings don't fail. Like they don't make critical failures, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The only way you can fail is if you roll a 1 twice.
Yeah, which I have done.
I
So
mean, it happens. I'm not saying it
does
doesn't
happen, but I mean, but you know, like it's a broken ability because there's no limit to it. You just
Right.
keep re-rolling it every time.
Yeah.
If you're making 2 attacks and you roll the 1 on both of the different attacks, you can re-roll both of those. Like it's very broken, and I
Right.
love it.
Yeah. So the only time you have, like I said, the only time you have to take the 1 is if you failed the lucky and then you re-roll the 1. That's the only one time you have to take the 1.
Yes.
And the funny thing is because I was curious about this now that we got talking about halflings, because this is one thing that I'm trying to keep up with, because as the world changes and as we know we're going to evolve, this D&D 1 is a big deal. It's not something small that we need to take lightly, because the community is going to actually influence 90% of it. And it looks like halfling was not changed. They're still lucky. It still makes sense. The fact that they're giving them a proficiency to stealth as well is kind of nifty. Not gonna lie.
Which makes sense. They should be.
I don't get, my one confusion on this is they're brave.
So I love playing that up in an RP situation.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just not sure if I would do that for every one of them. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, the way I see it is, everything is bigger than you. So
yeah,
you just kind of like, meh, you're just another big thing. I don't care.
right.
Yeah,
It's
and
the Chihuahua mentality.
exactly. That is exactly what it is. It is the Chihuahua mentality.
Yeah. So you're going to give them luck, and you're going to give them a Chihuahua and mentality. Great.
The one thing though that bothers me so much with halflings, though, the one thing it just bothers me so much is, why don't they have dark vision? Why? Like they should have dark vision.
I think if that was the case, they would have to take away something else.
I mean, I don't want them to, because halflings are my favorite.
Right.
Just for everything that's
so my theory on that would be is maybe there could be a version of halfling that could have dark vision. I wouldn't say all of them though, because if you think about it, halflings kind of give that same, once again, we're going to stereotype here, but hobbit, hobbits didn't have it. They all had little lanterns that they carried around with them, and they sat in their chairs and they smoked pipeweed, and life was great.
The whole, I mean, they live in the ground though, like, hobbit holes, like that's a thing. I mean,
yes, but if you look at hobbit holes, they have lights everywhere.
That's true. I guess I just want it because I hate, I'm trying to stealth around the place and I can't see anything.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think personally, my personal opinion on it is, I think what they did is they gave too many races dark vision.
Yeah.
And then you cripple then the races that don't have it most of the time. Where in 3rd edition, it was the exact opposite. There was like 4 races that had dark vision, and everybody else had to use a lantern. Like, it made sense. Like,
which I kind of feel like we should go back to. I feel like we should roll.
I think we should cut some of the dark vision. And like I said, I completely agree. Things like rock gnomes, okay, you can have dark vision. You literally live underneath the ground. Like, it makes sense.
Orcs, yeah, you should.
Orcs, yeah, you could have it. Tieflings.
Why do elves have dark vision? Like, their whole shtick is they live in the sunlight. Like, unless you're the drow, that's different. But
yeah, the other thing people need to remember though, and this is something that I tell people all the time, and they get mad at me for it, is if you have dark vision, you also now have the ability to be blinded very easily, because you shouldn't technically be in open, like full-blown sunlight at any time as dark vision. But most people don't like that.
there's a certain sense. I mean, that's how you had to play the
The
drow.
hypersensitive, yeah, it's how you had to play the drow. And I think that's where they needed to kind of watch with something like that, because now it's more of a, well, if you don't have dark vision, because here's the difference, right? So you've got either a race with dark vision, or your players are immediately begging for goggles of night. And at that point, it's like, but that removes the entire concept of trying to figure out how to do something throughout the entire game, right?
Right. Yeah,
So
exactly. Sometimes I need me as the DM, like I want a little bit of the darkness to cause some tension. That's what I'm looking for.
right,
Just
yeah,
some
no,
tension and like some
I
build
mean,
up.
because
Like
that's what our goal is. Our goal is to pull back and give tension. Like that's our plan throughout an entire story should be to just wave tension through your story. You don't want to always be at a tense moment, but you
well,
want to kind of
absolutely.
have that wave as it's going through. And I think that does, it kills some of the tension, especially if you're playing a more dark and brooding area of a game, maybe not even the whole game itself, but if you're trying to give off some of those strange feelings, the things that stick up on when you're the hair on the back of your neck goes up, that kind of stuff. If everybody can see. But the other thing was, and the other thing I liked about it, well, let me rephrase it. The other thing I don't like about it is a lot of your monsters don't have dark vision either. So you give all your players dark vision, you don't give
But the
a lot of
monsters,
monsters dark vision. I'm like, what?
what's the point?
Why? The idea is that the monsters, like if they're living in an area that they, because that was my thing, is like, okay, we're gonna do bandits, right? So then that means that if you walk into a bandit camp, you shouldn't not have vision. There should be lights somewhere, because first off, not everybody's a human, but everybody's not an elf either, unless it's that type of banditry.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, if you've got an assassin's guild of drow, okay, everybody's got dark vision, everybody's going to disappear. Got it, makes sense. Your everyday bandits are going to be an assumption of, all races that are in your area. So
It's gonna be a mix and match.
why would, but then, like I said, and that kills me because I see it more so sadly, I see it more so in homebrew than I do in modules, because most of the modules are like, hey, there are lights in every room, most likely. And it's your job just to kind of write it in of where they're at, but there should be lighting in every room, because that's what they do. You take anything like Lost Mines of Phandelver, you take um, Tomb of Annihilation, like all these modules, and they're like, hey, they're either pitch dark and nobody can see, or there's lights everywhere. So there is that.
So I've had an idea about a dungeon that I've wanted to make for a while.
Right.
It built around like this. I want to make a trap for my dark vision people. And this is going to be terrifying. So you might like this because it's going to be very dark kind of a situation. But some of the main ideas is I want to have monsters in the dungeon that play up to like they're expecting you to have dark vision, but you're still not going to be able to see them.
So I play that like I would at a carnival when you say like the whole room is black and white and they're checkered, and then the people move around it, but you can't tell until it's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is creepy as hell.
So some of the monsters I want to put in there are things like a living wall.
Okay. Yeah, things like living walls, cloakers, ropers. Ropers are fun.
And I don't know if this is an actual D&D monster. It might be, but and I'm gonna show my other nerd side. So this is from Harry Potter.
Go for it,
man. From good old Harry Potter. We're and it's not from any of the movies or any of the books. except for the Fantastic Beasts book that
Okay,
came out.
which one is this? Is this the one that
And
steals all the food or all the
no,
water?
not the movies, the book,
Oh, okay.
the
I
actual
didn't even
book.
I didn't even
Uh,
know there was books until it was like a year ago that they actually do like those were actually books as well. And I was like, oh shit, didn't know that.
yes, it's yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm going deep into the nerd side over here on the other
I'm
side
down
of
here. I'm
things
down with
in
the
Harry
nerd.
Potter. But there is a beast. It's called a Lethy Fold. Lethy Fold. It's supposed to. It's like an Irish type of beast or something like that. But
Yep, I'm
the
looking
the
into it
thing
right now.
is, it is basically a sheet of like a cloth. Basically, it's basically a cloth, and it's
Oh yeah.
completely black, and it just lays out like if it were laying on the ground, it would
Yeah,
just
so
look
you
like a
could
blanket laying on the ground.
yeah, so there's a couple options you have with that. I wouldn't say that the it's created in D&D, but there are a couple options you can use. You could always repurpose a rug of smothering
Yeah,
for that. That would be pretty easy to do.
that would be exactly the way I would go because the whole thing about them is they creep up on their victim and they
Mhm.
smother them,
Oh,
and
nice.
that's what I would want to do. Like I would want to have these things in the dungeon. You don't
Mhm.
see them because it's just a black blob. Like it looks like nothing. The room appears to be empty.
Nice. Yeah, I'm trying
um,
to remember if there's another. I'm thinking of another thing, and I can't remember what they're called. Yeah, they're cloakers, and there's something else. Oh, the dark mantles are another ones you can play up.
oh, and Shadowlancer said mimics too. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but here's the downfall of mimics. I love mimics. I think they're cool ideas. The downfall is when you throw a mimic at a player, everything they think everything is a mimic now, and it drives me nuts. So I have to very precisely place my mimics.
Yes,
Um,
I agree.
Also, read up on the lore of mimic. It's weird because they're not really what they are. They're actually this like gray ooze, like jelly type creature that can then take the form of things and make
Like
them
a
into their
gelatinous
own.
cube that can just change shapes.
Yes.
Thing. And that's
Um,
another thing that I would want in there is as gelatinous cubes.
yeah, the medieval Roomba.
Yes. Because
Yeah,
I feel like you shouldn't be able to see a gelatinous cube because it's basically translucent. And if it's dark and you're trying to rely
correct.
on dark vision, you shouldn't be able to see it.
Correct.
And
Yep.
that means you can walk right into one. And that would be very unfortunate.
Yeah, like I would probably give people perception checks if it's at the end of a hallway, because you might be able to see like the distortion in what you're looking at a little bit, but that'd be about it. As it slowly creeps towards you,
Yes.
it's ready to consume you.
So everyone, welcome to my dungeon of horrors. But that's how I like to DM. But
Yeah,
as a player, I'm full of craziness.
which is
Which
fine. Like I said, I mean, I'm kind of a backwards. I guess I like to really torture uh, my players when it comes to thinking outside the box. Is I'm like, hey, I'm going to give you these ideas, and I'm going to put you in these scenarios, and then I want to see what you do. Uh,
I think I don't think Garrett likes to see what I would do when he puts me in those situations anymore. So I have to tell this story because
yeah,
it's
go for it,
it's
man.
it's too good not to. Um, so this was our in-person table, and I was playing Trouble,
Mhm.
uh, and I got lured away by one of the enemy bad guys. Like
Okay.
she's a hag. She's undercover. She's pretending to be an old grandma lady. I'm
Yeah.
so nice. I've got warm cookies. Don't you want to come back to my cottage in the woods and get murdered?
Nope.
But basically trying to convert me into this cult situation. And Trouble knows exactly what's going on because we've been investigating this cult, and one of our other party members had been kidnapped in this exact manner once before. So Trouble knew everything that was happening and just went along with
And
it.
sometimes you just got to decide what you want to do, right? Like it's not It's not a bad thing. It's
The
just
thing is, like, he tends to be overconfident and doesn't really believe that he can get into any real danger. He might get into trouble because that's who he is, but not danger. He doesn't understand that. He's and he also has a thing for food, and she had these amazing snickerdoodle cookies, and I decided that that was too good to resist, so I went along with it. And we go back to this cottage. We're in the middle of nowhere. I'm separated from the party, and not even close. They don't even know I'm gone, which is amazing.
right.
So never split the party. This is a bad idea. And I'm a rogue also. So don't be alone as a rogue either, unless no one can see you. So tips for everybody. You die very easily. So I'm in this cottage, and there's the hag, and there's these two henchmen looking dudes, and they start trying to like basically like force him into the cult. And it comes down to the point of where it's like, well, what do you do here? Because now
Right.
you're either about to get forced into this cult, or you're gonna have to fight these people, and that's not going to go well for you, because as the rogue, I don't have any allies with me, so sneak attack is going to be very hard to generate.
You're only going to get it off once.
Yeah, it's not going to go so good. And I've got 3 enemies, and I'm like, I can't fight them. And Garrett, the DM, he made the mistake of ending the session there and giving me preparation time. Because I had a couple of weeks before we were able to come back.
And, right. I mean, at least
the part 2 of
at least he did the best option, which is, leave it on the cliffhanger before combat so that people are excited to come back and start this combat, right?
Yes.
Something I tell all people is, you always want to start with an explosion and end on a cliffhanger. You always want to set your mood at the beginning of the story.
I mean, it was a huge cliffhanger for sure, yeah. But combat did not happen at that time. Instead, so he's an arcane trickster,
right?
True to his nature.
Good.
Instead, I decided I'm going to use a combination of prestidigitation and minor illusion to change the way his voice sounds and project that he sounds more like a god, like a more divine kind of voice.
Right, yeah, you've got the more authoritative.
And he normally has a really high-pitched voice because he's a tiny little guy. He's got a little bit of trouble in there. But, so, it switched over his voice so he kind of plays the part a little bit more, and used minor illusion to place over himself like a translucent, kind of like a larger form, kind of giving off like there's a god within the halfling.
That's
kind of imagery. And then I launched into this little poetry bit that I had made that was basically telling the cult that part of the god had slipped into trouble because he had seen them try their summoning ritual before that didn't work, and that some of it slipped onto him, and that they actually need to redo the ritual with trouble to get the rest of his power.
Oh no.
Yes, and through a very good series of persuasions and the use of the minor illusion, just the combination of it, like, totally blindsided the DM, and he was just like, I don't know what to do here. I could see it on his face. He was like, I don't know what to do here. And so this is where it gets even better. So the cult isn't your normal cult. They're Koatoa.
And those are fun.
And if you know anything about Koatoa, a group of Koatoa, if they believe hard enough, they can create gods and make divine acts happen.
Yeah. So the way I've read it is they believe.
Yes, if they believe.
Yeah.
So,
but they're not like beholders that if they believe so much they become. There's just a consistent, not consistent, but a very reverent thought process behind a Kuoto, which is really strange to me because I've read all sorts of weird things about them because they're insane. They're not.
Yes. So
They were enslaved.
they can like create gods, I think is the thing. I can't remember exactly the way it's worded in there, but this hag was one of the big influencers in this cult, and I was getting her to believe in this, and so it was getting to the point where it was like, okay, so if I get them to believe this, that he is a part of the god and they just need to finish the ritual, like would would that just put godlike powers in the character? And it started like creating a really difficult situation for the DM because it was just the way that things were building up. Like it was a good presentation. It was convincing. They believed in the persuasion roles. Everything was going according to plan. And then they hit me with the weakness. They offered me more cookies. And I took them. And the DM was like, why does a god need cookies? Why do you need food? And the whole plan fell apart. and Trouble lost all of his potentials for becoming a god for a couple of snickerdoodles. And if you ask him, it was totally worth it. But all of that took enough time for the party.
He believes it's worth it.
It's fine, and all that took enough time for the party to somehow figure out where he had gone, and go basically bail him out of this situation that he was not getting out of on his own.
That's funny.
Yeah, so that was really interesting. Garrett was there for a while. He was just like, I don't know how to do this, kind of thing. And that was,
sometimes you hit those points, and you have to, especially when you're behind a table, you can kind of let your players know, be like, we need to take a break for a second because I got to process what the hell you just tried to pull off. But yeah, no, Shadow, you're right. After reading through this, Kuoto, if there's enough of them, they can manifest a physical entity of the god that of their subconscious. It's insane.
And that's what we were going for.
Yeah, but it's usually random or nonsensical. So, funny story on the Kuotoa. My first one shot that I ever ran as a GM after I got back into D&D, because I took a few years off of D&D when I joined the military and was just super, super busy. And all I would do is play. I didn't GM. And my one shot back, it was a small town. People were losing random things. And they found out at the end of the story that the Kuotoa were sneaking in at night, taking items as offerings to their god. And they found that behind the waterfall, there was a sentient rocking chair. Because the other thing about Kuotoa that most people have not, that I think has been taken out of lore since, but in like first and second edition, is that the biggest thing in their area, they would start to consider that as their deity. So the biggest thing that they had was a rocking chair. So they believed this rocking chair was the god that they needed to worship. So then they went to the town and stole all the little items that were smaller than the rocking chair and made this giant pile of things for the rocking chair. And my players were so confused when they realized that that's all it was a bunch of these maniac Kuotoa that were stealing items from the locals to worship their rocking chair god. And that was my introduction to them playing as Kuotoa. But that was the thing, is the Kuotoa were insane, so they just saw it. This was the biggest thing in the area. This must be a god. It's bigger than them. So it was quite whimsical, you could say, to to watch that happen, and all my players going, "What?
Did all this
Like,
for a rocking chair?"
Yeah, we did all this for a rocking chair. No. You did all this so that you could find the missing things. You just realized that the reason things were missing is because of the rocking chair. And that then spun into our Halloween adventure where they found a green hag. That was and dealt with scarecrows, but and realized that their entire adventure then became tracking down a hag coven that likes to put people into little bottles and take them places.
Now, that's terrifying.
That was terrifying. It was great. I loved it. They would use a shrink and large spell, place them in a glass bottle, and then the bottle would be built so that they would never be able to get out, it would be built so that the spell would never stop. So it wasn't until you uncorked the bottle that the spell would stop. My players were then trailing the hag coven as they're traveling around the towns, and then they got attacked by a Banderhob, and it was nasty. I tortured my players that season.
Dang, started off with all whimsy, fun and games.
Yeah, exactly. It went straight to
nightmare
bleeding
hag
and
that's
death.
gonna put you in a glass bottle.
Yeah, it was a green hag. It wasn't a nightmare. I didn't throw nightmares at them until they were a few levels higher.
Oh yeah, nightmares for later.
Yeah, nightmares are for later. Nightmares are one of those hags you sprinkle in and you let it slowly soak.
Absolutely.
Hey, how's your memory looking? Oh, I just had this horrible dream. Okay, cool. A couple days go by. You have another bad dream. A couple days go by. You have another bad dream. Sprinkle that in for 6-7 episodes, and then realize that the night hag has just been siphoning your dreams for the last 6 weeks.
No big deal. No big deal.
Are there Kuatoa in the Prohibition campaign setting? That's a good question. Are there Kuatoa in the Prohibition campaign setting?
There may be. We haven't decided yet. So that's kind of a test ground for the Storio's setting guide, the table that we're playing where the Kuatoa are. So there's some potential there for that.
Right. So fair warning, just a heads up, if you're going to try to publish, make sure the Kuatoa are in the SRD. So, because if they're not and they're owned already, you can't actually put them in your book. So
that then probably not. Then they're probably not going to be there.
Yeah, like I said, you got to make sure that they're part of the licensing or the open source license for D&D.
Makes sense. Oh gosh, I was gonna. Oh, so when you talk about putting them into a glass bottle, I saw online somewhere somebody said that they were trying to do a little stealth situation as the party, and if you're a party trying to stealth, that the paladin is always a terrible party member during this stealth option. So what they did is they used the shrink spell on the paladin and stuck him in a little glass bottle or whatever it was. And then when they finally ran into the enemy, the encounter or whatever, they threw the glass bottle with the paladin at the enemy, and it was like a paladin grenade. And I thought that was really hilarious. And I love that. And ever since I heard about that, I wanted to do that. Not me being the paladin, because I would want to be the one throwing them. I would want to be the halfling throwing the giant, maybe like a giant Goliath or a dragonborn paladin. It's like, haha,
right.
Now the tables have turned. I have thrown you. Because the little guys, we always get thrown around. That's what happens to us. Although I recently did that with my bugbear bard to our fighter. They were trying to see if I knew any spells, and I told them I knew the fly spell. So it was a great time. The holy hand grenade, yes, Shadowlander, you are correct. Yeah. It was the holy hand grenade.
So a heads up, the SRD does not have Kuato in it, so you wouldn't be able to use it. It's probably a Forgotten Realms exclusive.
Probably.
The only way you would be able to use it is if you published on DM's Guild. And though I like DM's Guild, they take a huge cut from your profits.
That's what I hear. So
Because you can write anything in Forgotten Realms setting and publish it on the DM's Guild because it's owned by Wizards of the Coast. The other downfall with the DM's Guild, though, I think it's an awesome opportunity for people, is you automatically then give full rights to Wizards of the Coast, and that sometimes could be very bad. So
yeah, that sounds like it could be a good thing, but then again, it's not. So
right,
gotta be careful.
Gotta be careful. So yeah, SRD is an important document to have when you're trying to write for D&D stuff, or well, TTRPGs in general.
Yes, I will keep that in mind. And Garrett's the one primarily working on that setting guide, so I'll have to check in with him.
Now you can just rewrite, instead of it being a fish, you can make it a frog-looking thing and make it different named, or
it's totally different. They're not hobbits; they're halflings. Pull that number on
well,
them.
thankfully, halflings are is part of the SRD. Hobbits, however, I don't believe are even any of it. Speaking of hobbits, have you seen the new RPG? That thing looks so cool. I want to play it so bad.
I have not.
The One Ring is. I am a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and though everybody hates me for it, I'm actually enjoying the new series, and I think it's because I get to see another interpretation of the cities and the areas. Where would this campaign be published?
Now, are you talking about the TV show there?
The new TV show.
Okay.
Yeah.
That seems to be the controversial opinion to like it. So I'm behind. I've only seen the first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
But I am enjoying it.
Yeah, like I said, I am enjoying it fine. I am sure that as we continue to dip deeper and deeper into the lore, that there's going to be something, and I'm going to go. But I'm also a huge Marvel fan of the comics, and there's a lot of things that they did different in Marvel, and I was like, I've really gotten used to being able to just appreciate something different instead of, and I can always come up with new ideas that I'm excited for, because I believe the one character I think is going to reveal himself, that he's going to be Sauron and all that stuff. And
I'm really hoping that Sauron, and again, I've only seen like the first 2 episodes, so maybe it's already been put out there, but I'm really hoping that Sauron is like the dude on the raft, or something where he's a character that's been there this whole time that maybe you don't suspect, but you get to see him interact, and maybe you even start to kind of like him, and he betrays you, and you're like, oh my god, it's Sauron. No.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
That would be interesting. I'd be curious on that one. So Shadow Lantern asks, where would you be publishing that campaign at? I'm guessing over at your guys' website.
Yes, that would be where it would be happening. And we do not have a date for that yet. So
it takes a long time.
Yes, it is a big project. And our problem is we have like shiny syndrome. So we're like, ooh, let's do this. Ooh, let's do this.
It's this guy right here. I've got 5 projects that I've got to get done in the next 6 months.
Yeah, we've been working on a lot of different things, and we've finally narrowed that, Garrett, the other part of 225, Garrett is going to work on the story of his setting guide. I am primarily working on our new player class that we're creating here. And
we get a little sneak peek, like what kind of player class are we thinking? Let me rephrase that. Are we talking class, or are we talking subclass?
Class with I think 6 or 7 subclasses.
Okay, so what is this class? Because now I'm curious.
So, not everything's finalized yet.
Right, got it.
Here's the overall picture.
Okay.
You imagine if you were to take things that you love from Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
And Yu-Gi-Oh.
Okay.
And you put that into D&D.
Okay.
and you were basically Gambit with Magic the Gathering cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards in D&D.
Okay. I'll bite. We'll see how this goes, but I'll bite. I'm curious on the mechanics and stuff like that, because that's where my brain will start flying through. But yeah, I'll bite. I personally, I don't think would, like I said, I don't know, because the concept seems interesting. I think I would play this as a monster personally. This would be a bad guy for me, but I'm curious on the class. I'm curious of how the subclasses will work. Because the problem with building a class, and I've talked to a lot of people about classes specifically, the problem with building a class is you have to mechanically change things for each class.
Yes.
Where subclasses be a little different. If you're like, hey, we have this is the bard of, with I mean, it could even be a cleric. Be like, this is the cleric of cards, or a school of fate bard, and let me think, path of, the
Half of the Gambler Barbarian.
path of the gambler barbarian, like things like that. Like I can see that, because you already have a built-in system of how the character works. But to build an entire class, that's a much larger.
Which is why this project is also taking a lot of time, because the class, you're right, needs to feel different and unique to itself.
Like when I first saw the psionics class, I was like, this is very similar to the sorcerer. And then you find out what psionic dice do, and you're like, oh, hey, no, this does a lot more weird stuff that I don't completely agree with all the time, because I believe psionics are broken. But
yeah, and that's the other thing, running into the class, and why I want to take a lot of time on it and make sure that I get something that's good out there, is it doesn't need to be like well, this is just the wizard reflavored, or
right, exactly, and that's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, like, so it's like, what's the difference between that and the wizard using a scroll? Like,
right,
it's the same thing, but it's not.
yeah, exactly. So that's why I said the mechanics will be the interesting portion of it. Because if you're not a wizard, you're not a sorcerer, you're casting innately, or you're not, or you're or you're not like an artificer that's built that does scroll based, like that kind of thing. There's a subclass of wizard that actually very reminds me of this class that you're talking about, and I can go find it. Let's see here, wizards. The scribe, order of the scribe.
Yeah, with the animated spellbook.
Yeah, with the the awoken spellbook, the animated quill. It very reminds me of more of like Once Upon a Time ABC series, where the author kind of writes the story as it's happening type feel.
Yeah, that,
which was a good series.
I do like that feel of the wizard, and I've been making a lot of taking a lot of measures to make sure that the class is different, and that it's not just a reflavoring of a different class.
I would definitely, though, not saying you have to change it. Like I would definitely work on this class, and I would definitely make it develop towards your setting guide so that it makes sense to the story that you're telling at the same time. I would also provide a couple subclasses to your setting guide as well that would be different, that would match directly with this prohibition thought process. Maybe the monk, maybe it's a moonshine monk, maybe he has a better chance of casting, or certain abilities don't affect him, or the rages act differently based on this area. Because then you can really tie your entire story together instead of just making a class separate, which I think it's one thing you don't want to do. You don't want to make a separate class and then a separate setting. You want to make sure they're talking together. It's my own personal opinion after writing a lot.
Oh no, I agree, and that is something that will tie in pretty well
Okay.
because
Nice.
you have to remember, like, one of the things with the mafia back then
Right.
was a lot of the racketeering that they did
Correct.
was built around gambling,
Right. Yeah.
and that was the big driver of it. So this was before drugs was like the main
Correct.
crime syndicate type of thing.
Yep.
Like, this was all about, conning people, alcohol sales, of course, running
Yeah.
nightclubs. And so this is something that I do see being mixed into the setting guide very well. Now, how we release these things, that's all up in the air. Once
Right.
we got to get some things done. But I, for one, really just like the idea that you can bring in like a card wielding character and do a
Like I
lot of
said, if you're
unique
playing in a
things.
world like with those same tones of prohibition and gambling, almost this, because you could play the prohibition side, you could play like a Wild West. Like, I'm trying to come up with multiple scenarios so that if I picked up this guide, I could go, okay, I like this setting, but I might move it here as well. Because I think when you can give them those opportunities like that, your marketability is better. Um,
That's good. That's good. I like that.
because like I said, you could play like a Wild West, because if you're still doing with gambling, alcohol, that kind of thing, you could play prohibition type feels. Um, you could dabble into things like that. Uh, I always love to think, like I always ask myself when I'm playing games like that, where like, what would happen if magic was part of that? How would that
Mhm.
look differently? How would that
Yeah.
be? And then how much dedication to magic would they have?
Mhm.
Because personally, I would almost make magic prohibition based, where you don't just go out and just start randomly casting, because that could completely alert everyone.
Right.
Uh, Very similar to, I guess you would say, almost like a like a Harry Potter type feel. Like, we don't tell people we have magic. Like, this is not
Yeah,
something we do.
that should be a secret. and
Yeah,
and that's part of, like, where the I'm calling it the dealer class right now.
yeah,
I'm still working on the name, but and that's kind of like another piece where that would come in, because magic kind of is on the prohibition side of it. You're not necessarily using magic, like you're
right,
using these cards, these artifacts kind of things,
yeah,
for similar effects. So it's like kind of bypassing some of those things, or maybe being a little bit sneakier with it.
yeah. You might be able to start looking into things like, maybe dive into. I mean, if you're looking for inspiration of how maybe to write it mechanically, look into things like the smuggler class from Star Wars, or things like that, where you're dipping into that same feel, and then just blending that to your understanding, um, of how the
And
class is supposed to go.
absolutely. And one of those subclasses, this is probably my favorite one. Um, I'm calling it the Mad Hatter for right now.
Okay, I'm
Um,
guessing it's a bard class.
no, this
Oh,
is for the dealer class.
oh no, you're talking about, oh, it's subclass for the dealer.
This,
Okay.
yes, still a subclass for this. Um, and the big thing about them is they also have a wild magic table, and it's kind
Okay.
of building off of that whimsical, you don't know what's going to happen, like with a moonshine mana kind of
Yeah.
idea. And the some of the things on this wild magic table, uh, I mean, it makes me laugh just thinking about some of them. I'll
Right.
give you one as an example.
Sure.
So uh yeah, I'm gonna no, let me pull it up and read it, because I feel like
All right. No worries.
I may not make it through just laughing if I try to describe it on my own. Hopefully this I'm not hyping this up too much. So this one right here is one of my favorites. You summon Dave the zombie. Dave has no offensive capabilities and is immune to all conditions. Or is immune to all damage, sorry, is immune to all damage, but can suffer from effects such as paralysis or being knocked prone. He has no modifiers or any saving throws. Dave is controlled by the DM and is your biggest cheerleader. Dave will enthusiastically cheer for you even about the most menial task, as everything you do is amazing to Dave. Dave disappears to where he came from in 1d4 hours or until your DM says so.
Nice.
And that right there, it's just one of those things where it gives the DM an opportunity to really interact with their players in a very interesting way.
I think that's a fun thing when your DM can interact with players properly.
And it's just a happy random side effect. It doesn't benefit you in any way. It's just your DM
it's just your DM rooting for you like over and over and over again until he decides that it's time to go away.
And I don't know, I see that as being really funny.
I feel like I, as a DM, would make that so painful for my players.
Yes,
like, hey, everybody's getting ready to go into, we're going to get ready and we're going to go steal that thing. And then there's just Dave. Hi, guys. This guy's amazing. And just runs through everything. He's just like, damn it, Dave.
And you can't kill him. You can't get rid of him.
At that point, you just look at him and you're like, hold person, stay. All right, let me keep doing what I got to do. But now I got to keep concentration on you because you made me waste my time. I appreciate that. I look forward to it. Look forward to seeing how this is all gonna go. Hey, audience, I know we got only a few minutes left before we close down the tavern for the evening. But if you guys have any questions for myself or Chris, make sure you're tossing those up in the chat room here, just so we can answer those before we head out. No, I'm looking forward to it. Now I'm going to try to get over there and watch some more Story Ellis, along with 70 other shows that I'm trying to keep up with. Man, I'm telling you,
same here.
The D&D world is ridiculous,
and so many good people too, and that's why I want to try and keep up with everybody's. One last thing, I know you said we only got a few minutes here. So we've been having in over 225. We've been having a couple or a little bit of a discussion about something that's also come up in the D&D community here lately, and it's the discussion, this little debate about who wins in a one-on-one fight. And you might have heard this: a level 20 wizard or a level 20 fighter, one-on-one fight. Who's taken that crown? Who do you think is taking that?
I mean, I'm most likely calling wizard like 100%.
Oh, okay. I see.
There's a lot of things I can do as a level 20 wizard that's just absolutely horrendous.
I mean, level 20 wizards are absolutely insane. But I think the thing that changes it is that it's a one-on-one fight.
Yeah, but
and a level 20 fighter is also nuts.
I don't think it has anything to do with it. Let me rephrase it. I don't think there's a single martial class that could defend against a one-on-one with a arcane class at level 20.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's even bigger. Okay.
I truly don't believe so. After, like, you have to start hunting down level 9 spells and just wonder, like.
But you only get one of those, one level 9 spell.
Yeah, but I kept power word kill. It's done.
Yeah,
game over.
You gotta get him below 100 hit points, though. I mean, at level 20, he's got more than 100 hit points. So you gotta save that one.
Let me look at a couple others, because I know there's just more than that. I mean, if you really want to get nasty, you got Meteor Swarm.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting.
Power word kill. Let's see here. What's the duration on that? It's an hour. It really doesn't do anything at that point. You could zap it and then go run away. There's that. Because you could do like true polymorph and polymorph them into a slug, and problem is once, and then you have an hour to run away.
But you gotta kill them at some point. So there are a lot of interesting and terrible things that wizards can do, of course, but
Yeah.
You
I
have
mean,
to remember.
I've played a fighter, and I've played a very high level fighter and wrecked some serious people. Like, I get it. I just don't. I don't. I don't think it's enough.
So the wizard though doesn't have a lot of hit points. We all know that. So they're very
Correct.
squishy. And to get any of these things against the fighter, you've also got to depend on a failed saving throw
Right, which they
on
have
these things.
which they have indomitable, which then would
So it could make
allow
them
them
very
to
difficult
very difficult.
to get that saving throw off. And fighters have a lot of hit points because they got a really good hit die, and they can defend pretty well. And they own the action economy with action surge and being able to make 4 attacks.
Right.
Just the number of attacks, like it's a pretty good matchup the way that these two go ahead. I think more than most classes like against each other. It's almost
like I
like
said,
for
the
every
other thing you're
strength one
gonna
has, it runs up against the
yeah,
strength of
the other
another.
thing you're gonna fight into is subclass.
Mhm.
Because
yeah.
like fighter subclasses could change everything.
Yeah, the fighter I'm getting into this discussion, this debate right here. I'm on the side of the fighter, by the way. I'm all in, like level 20 fighter takes it. And I think I don't think it's a contest, in my opinion, on a one-on-one fight. And this is assuming that the wizard has no preparation time. This is not Batman versus Superman, where Batman has 20 years to prepare
Right,
for
yeah.
the fight. This is just a straight up fight. They're going in, the box and duking it out. Because the fighter has too much defensive capabilities, and just getting into these subclasses. Some of these subclasses are insane. Like Echo Knight, you just get a ridiculous number of attacks as well because of your echoes.
Right.
There's the champion where you can crit like crazy, especially if you're making a bajillion attacks a turn. The samurai, you're giving yourself advantage on attacks. You get an additional saving throw bonus.
Like I said, really, it's really the biggest thing with wizards is you would have to look and see what some of their final level abilities are, because that's the only big difference that you're going to see between wizard and fighters, is that the abilities that they're received as their subclass.
Yeah.
Because like trying to remember some of them. It's like some of these are crazy, and then some of them. The other downfall with wizard, a lot of the stuff, especially in the higher levels, is they're very DM responsive. So it's that the DM has to allow you to do things like that. Like you could do wish, right? Wish is an insta kill if the DM really allows it.
So
you wouldn't have a choice.
And I'm glad you brought that up. And I kind of want to get your take on this, because you did say it's up to the DM. So my take on wish is that it can't exceed the capabilities of a 9th level spell. Right? Is my take on wish, because you have to contain it somehow. Like, so if I'm the DM, this is how I'm running it at my table.
Which makes sense.
So if
I
you
mean,
want to use
I agree.
So if you want to use it to kill somebody, it's power word kill.
Right.
Maybe I'll take away the saving throw, but you're still stuck with that same parameters. So if they have more than 100 hit points, it didn't work. In my opinion, that's the way that it works.
Right. The Midas spell a mortal creature can cast by simply speaking aloud. You can alter the very foundations of reality in accordance to your desire. Basis of this spell is to duplicate any other spell of 8th level or lower. You don't need to meet any requirements of the spell, including cost. So this is where it hits, right? Because you can say you can do 8th level or lower.
Okay.
There are other ones that it says, here are some of the other following effects. You create one object that's up to 25,000 health, or 25,000 GP in value that isn't magical. You can allow up to 20 creatures that you can see to regain all health points, and then end all effects that are described in a greater restoration. You can grant up to 10 creatures they can see resistance to a damage type. grant up to 10 creatures the ability to be immune to single spells or magical abilities for 8 hours. This is the one that gets dark. You can undo a single recent event by forcing a reroll of a roll made within the last round. Reality reshapes itself to accommodate the new roll. Now, this is what it says in the book. Right below it, of course, it gives you other information. It says you might be able to achieve something beyond the scope of these examples. State your wish to the GM as precisely as possible. The GM has great latitude in ruling what occurs in such an instance. The greater the wish, the greater the likelihood that something goes wrong. So let's put it this way. I wish for the fighter to, to die, right? What I don't realize is that by doing so, I actually throw myself 100 years in the future. When the fighter died from old age, and I'm sitting there,
I mean, you still won technically. Still won.
But that's where, like I said, you could play it very because the wish spell is so allowable.
Yes.
You give them extremely powerful abilities. The spell might simply fail. The effect you desire might only be partially achieved, and you could so at that point you could also roll percentage dies in order to allow wish to do effects that might not be true. For enduring this change.
Yeah, the wish spell, it can get very, very dicey.
Right, it can get very dicey. And that's where, like I said, things like wish kind of, Now here's the only other downfall. There's one other thing that we have to remember is there are certain spell abilities out there that if tacked together well enough, even if we were on a one-on-one, you would never reach the character before he shoots you multiple times.
Okay.
Because if you put let's say we have a wizard, and I think, let me see, I'm going to use just this spell because I know this spell is not, I'm just curious what, let's see. Disintegrate is what range?
120.
60 feet.
60 feet, okay.
Right, so it's 60 feet. So disintegrate is 60 feet. Oh, let's see here. And then you add spell sniper, which doubles the distance. So it's when you start diving into things like that things get dicey. Because then the question is okay, we're one-on-one, but if I'm 360 feet away and can throw things for the next, 8 turns.
Well, so here's
but you also have so you'll do what? 1, 2. So the maximum a fighter can run would be 60 feet a turn unless they have extra abilities, I believe.
So using disintegrate,
right,
still has a saving throw,
right,
and it's a dex save,
right.
Now,
depending on what type of fighter he is, you're doing it at a disadvantage, bro.
I mean, it could be, and then and the other thing is, like, the fighter itself, you could be looking at a dex build fighter,
right, which then it gets different.
And then that's difficult to overcome. I mean, now they don't have the saving throw for dexterity. They don't have the proficiency in the saving throw for dex.
Right.
They have strength and constitution, if I'm thinking right.
Yeah.
I think that's right. But still, like if you run into a dex build fighter and they have indomitable, so they get an additional roll,
Mhm.
you could run into some serious issues right there. Now, even 10d6 plus 40, max damage, you're doing 100 points of damage. Max
Right.
damage.
Right.
A fighter at level 20, you're 20d10 for hit points.
Yeah.
They've got more than 100 hit points.
Oh yeah, no, I know. But you got to think, you can cast, how many times can I cast Disintegrate?
Is it a 7th level
Six
spell?
level spell.
6th level spell. At least 4 or 5 times. Maybe 6.
Like with Spell Sniper, you're able to cast 2 or 3 of those before they even get to you. But man,
so I like that you're invested in this, because next week on the 225 stream, just before yours, an hour before yours,
hour before mine,
myself and Dungeon Mike, he's our newest member of 225 games.
Okay.
We are going to play out this scenario. I have made
a level 20 fighter.
I've actually made 3 level 20 fighters.
Okay.
He has made his level 20 wizard, and we are going to duke it out. I am confident that, and so we're gonna fight 3 of 3. Best of 3 type of situation.
You guys are gonna be there forever.
Probably. Or not at all, because his wizard's gonna die so fast. Which is what I'm thinking is gonna happen. But we're playing it out because we wanted to make sure it's really fair.
Right.
We're going rules as written as much as possible.
Right.
If it's purely based on what is there in the rules, what's written, not rule of cool.
Right. Well, yeah, you can't really do, if you're doing a battle like this, you can't really do a rule of cool.
Exactly. And I love rule of cool. I'm a big fan. I'm not a rules player. I love rule of cool. But in this, like we want to settle the debate. Like I said, I've got 3 builds that I think all 3 of them take him so easily because he's a weak wizard. We've put some parameters around it. It's all source book materials are available. No Unearthed Arcana, no homebrew, nothing like that.
Right. Well, yeah, you can't. Yeah.
And we maxed out hit points. So, the wizard, they might have those D6s, but they're getting all 6 points on each die.
Right.
That way it's not like a lucky crit kind of situation. And like I said, we're playing it 3 times. Just that way, it's nothing like it was just a lucky roll.
Right.
But yeah, feel free to come tune in, before your
might have to pop in there. If not, I'm gonna watch it afterwards. But I'm curious to see who wins.
I'm betting it's gonna be 3-0. Fighter wins every time, because
I've never heard that. We'll see.
So I've seen it a lot on D&D TikTok. That's where I've seen a lot of the discussion go down. People are very passionate about one side or the other. And
yeah, like I said, I mean, I personally believe if I built a fighter to specifically against a wizard, I could probably do it. But if I'm just building a fighter just to build a fighter, I don't think I could pull it off. Trying to think if there's like single class that, because like there's other things, like I personally believe a sorcerer can defeat a wizard because of some of their extra abilities,
especially because you dive into a lot of that action economy that they get to take advantage of. But that's why I go back to the fighter, because they own action economy with action surge.
Yeah, as long as you can get to them.
I mean, that could be an issue.
Yeah. Because if you think about it, like, and a lot of it's going to be dice rolling. A lot of it is going to be your die. That's what's going to defend or acknowledge you, because I mean, if you think about it, how many spells can they cast though at that level?
Why?
Yeah, I mean, totally you've got 4, 7, 10, 13, 16, 18, 20, so 22 spells that they can cast.
Well, and you get
But
your
if you're,
signature spells too, so some of those you're casting for free.
well, yeah. So if you think like the one I'm thinking of is like hold person. You can last hold person, or it's only a second level spell. So target must succeed on a wisdom save or be paralyzed for the duration. You do a hold person and then probably next round would be a phase step, and then so that you're not getting attacked, and then you've stepped yourself far away enough to continue to fire stuff at people. It's going to be interesting, I'll tell you that. Be curious to see who wins those 3 fights. If you have a Kensai fighter, he's probably going to take the first kill because he's just going to rain arrows down on people. It's be game over. That one might.
I made
that one
3
might
different fighter builds. He's made
Yeah.
1 wizard because he said that I only need the one, and I kind of understand that because from a wizard perspective,
Right.
it's really not about the subclass for the wizard. It's really more about the spell selection and how you use it, is what it's really going to come down.
Yeah, kind. Oh man. See, I feel he's gonna bite himself in the butt though if he doesn't review his spell subclasses, because there are things out there that definitely can allow him to improve. Like if he's playing war magic, or he's playing a chronologic or graviturgic, where he's able to mess with the environment around you, that's where he's going to pull his action economy. Because that's the only downfall is action economy is great when you can hit. But if he stays away from you, he drops your action economy to the same amount he has.
Yeah, then it doesn't matter. That's true as well. Now, I have no idea what he's built. I don't know anything about it other than that it's a level 20 wizard. And the other thing is basic equipment. So no magic equipment, nothing like that. We don't want it to be based on items, any stuff like that. Which I get, that kind of favors the wizard a little bit more.
Now, are you allowed though to use any basic equipment, or
so any basic equipment that makes sense for the subclass? Yeah. So I might swing some big weaponry or something. Who knows? I'm not revealing anything. He doesn't know anything about my builds either.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
And that right there is also to protect the integrity of like preventing like any sort of like metagaming kind of strategies, like from both of our sides, because like I don't want to know what he's going to do ahead of time, because then I might be tempted to build
specifically for that, and especially with your end with being you have 3 classes, like 3 builds. I don't know. Chat, if you're still here as we close down, I'd love to hear you guys' opinion, fighter or wizard. Just blast it in the chat room. Let us know what you think. Chris, it's good talking with you, man. Hope to see you back on the show here a couple weeks again, hopefully again, and have Garrett here once he's feeling better.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this was good. It was great chatting with you and hanging out.
Yeah, man, this is what I love doing. This is my favorite show because I don't have to prepare for it. All you gotta do is find a guest, find a topic, and we just go down the rabbit hole until for about an hour and a half. But if you would, and anybody in the chat, if you would, please make sure that if you haven't already, hit the follow button. If you're going to watch this later on YouTube or on Spotify, hit those subscribes. And of course, this week coming up is the finale of Plots in Darkenhaven Season 1 with special guest Mandy from our wonderful people over there at GUI Cube. So if you can peek on over, where there's rumors of giveaways and other cool things that are going to happen on stream on Sunday. So without giving away too much, pop on over, see what's happening. And we'll be playing that at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. Next week, we have our new guest, Matt from, Matt from 20 Sided Dice over, it's a new podcast. And I'm curious because he says it's fast combat. So I think that's going to be one of the things we're going to be talking about next week is how to speed up combat, how to make it fast and fun. So I'm looking forward to talking to them, hearing about their new podcast. I've listened to episode 1. It's pretty darn good, not going to lie. So definitely go check them out on all of your podcasting viewer ability areas, things. But as for everybody else, the inn is closed, the tavern is closed. This is last call. So before we go, Chris, do you have anything last you want to say?
It's been wonderful hanging out with y'all. This is amazing. Love the channel. And just thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, no worries. Go check them out over at 225 Games. Get them to that 100 so that they can continue to grow as well. And we'll see you guys all next week for Tavern Talks, episode 63. Later.